So I'm sad to announce to some of you, at least, many of you probably already are aware, but Dr. Heather Ashton has passed. Um, uh, and according to the Benzo Information Coalition, she died peacefully in her sleep just before midnight on Sunday, September 15th. Now, if you don't know who Dr. Heather Ashton was, let me tell you, she was beloved. I mean, I'm sure you've heard her name in different forums and in the comments. You've likely seen her videos. She was a pioneer, one of the first people to, one of the first people really out there fighting to have doctors recognize benzo withdrawal syndrome. To really educate these doctors that there was indeed something happening here. She recognized working with many patients, maybe hundreds, if not thousands of patients going through benzo withdrawal, that there were at least a few key points, some correlations amongst them. First being benzos are powerful drugs with perhaps the most dangerous, profound withdrawal symptoms. I mean, worse than heroin, worse than any other drug on this planet. Takes the longest to come off. You can die from it. People are left sometimes not recovered, with permanent brain damage and things like that. That individuals that tapered slowly did better than patients that tapered quickly off the drug or cold turkeyed. For example, 4 to 16 months of taper versus, 1 month or 2 weeks or cold turkey. Surprisingly, people actually still cold turkey, even with all the information and what the doctors should know. I am continuously hearing stories about clients that were that were cold turkeyed by their doctors. It's unbelievable. I heard a story about someone that came off benzos after 18 years, cold turkeyed them by their doctor. I mean, that's just nuts. I mean, that could have produced a fatal seizure. And finally, Heather Ashton recognized that the prescription protocols, the reasons for the prescription, the length of the prescription, and the taper method were all largely out of control and needed addressing. These doctors were essentially overprescribing, prescribing for any damn thing. You stubbed your toe, here's a benzo. And then there was no taper method. It was just, okay, you've been on a benzo for 8 years, let's say Xanax for 3 milligrams. Okay, we're going to, get you down to 2 milligrams in a month, and then maybe in 2 weeks after that, we'll get you down to 1.5 or 1, and then we're just going to rip you off. When you got this 12, well, not even a 12-week, it would probably be more like an 8-week plan, and you can't heal in that time. You can't adapt psychologically, emotionally. I mean, it's far too quick. And she's seen that there needed to be something done. So Heather Ashton was one of the first people, one of the loudest voices out there, not just working in the communities, not just writing her manual, creating a book, doing all this rigorous studying and research to try to create this, best, safest method for tapering. And she later went into other areas. She, spoke about antidepressants. A lot of people think that she was totally against antidepressants. That's not the case. She said that there was a time and place for them during the taper and that it could help. And if you're certainly contemplating suicide, it's probably time to consider an SSRI. And when you come off it, you could taper off. She was a big component for exercise and exposure as well. She talked about rumination. She talked about the darker sides of the benzo forms. I mean, she was a hip cat. I mean, she really she wasn't sold out to any dogma scientifically or in the benzo community, or nobody bought her out, which I really respect, that she went down throughout her whole life fighting the good fight and never was bought out. So Dr. Heather Ashton, she has been conducting research in the area of benzo withdrawal and recovery, as well as fighting for real immediate legal changes in the way the benzos are used in mental health. She was a very smart woman. She didn't want to help people that were currently going through benzo withdrawal only. She wanted to help so that the people in the future, people that may take benzos in the future, will not have to go down such a hellish road. And you got to respect that. She was looking ahead. And it's a serious road, because we've lost people to suicide from benzo recovery, or benzo withdrawal, rather. Countless lives ruined after individuals were forced to speedily taper off the drug and they couldn't recover, lost their jobs, lost their friends, lost their family, lost their will for life, thought it was impossible, thought they were never going to heal, thought even if they did heal, what kind of life do they come back to? I mean, it's heavy stuff. And of course, as sure as I say all this, and I'm echoing what are really very real feelings that people have here, you do heal. Most of us heal. You do get your life back. Everything you lost, you can get back. And that's the process of life. And if life hasn't taught us anything, is that many times in life, multiple times anyway, we will probably get knocked down and have to get back up. Multiple times we will lose things that we can't replace. We'll get sick. People will die. And we keep getting up. That's life. That's what all of us, that's the soup all of us are in. So if it feels hopeless, it's not hopeless. And if people are telling you it's hopeless, you got to get away from those people. So let me elaborate for a minute. Up until now, and really this thing is still going on, doctors have been in a bit of denial regarding benzo withdrawal severity. They don't seem to appreciate a long taper, nor do they seem to acknowledge the relapse rates of individuals tapered too quickly from benzo, right? We know they see it. I mean, we see it. I've got family in psychiatry. I have a pretty damn good insight into it. I see firsthand. I've had the conversations. They know what's happening, guys. Whenever a client comes to me and tells me, my therapist or my psychiatrist doesn't see or she doesn't believe, that's just bullshit. She sees it. She knows that when she puts someone on a benzo, 98% chance they're going to stay on that benzo until it stops working, and then she's going to use an SSRI, or they're going to use whatever chain of other drugs. They know. They're not getting people in there who's experiencing some panic, and they go, here, let's get you a 8-week benzo. I want to put you in contact with this really good guy. He's an OCD specialist, or he's an anxiety panic specialist, or whatever the situation requires. And once you get that under control, we're going to taper you off this drug, and you're going to go about your life better. It's not what's typically happening. You come in, you get the benzo, you stay on it. It's a chemical problem, damn it. Okay, whatever. It's frustrating. In my own findings, I've noticed individuals that are tapered too quickly are much more likely to end up on other psychotropics like SSRIs, sleep aids, or just back on the benzos. You got to go slow. You got to go at your own pace. And I've also spoken about not going too slow. There's a point where some of us, for whatever reason, whether it's in our spirit or our personality or just our story, we get so beaten down for whatever reason, and we can't fight hard enough. And that's where I think we can see slide down a really deep well, and so if you stay down that well for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and you're still playing the taper game, I, for one, believe that creates more problems than it helps. And most of you agree with me. I've had a few of you say, damn it, Dave, when Dr. Ashton said you taper as long as you need, that's what she meant. Well, look, I'm not necessarily in 100% agreement with everything she said. Science is built. No scientist Freud, nobody's watching everything Freud said and using it like the Gospels. And in the future, no one will use what me and Ashton said 100%. People are always expanding and discovering new things. So if she said that, I don't know. There's so much, you see so much in the community of people telling you what Ashton said. Oh, she said she's against SSRIs. Well, I see in writing she wasn't. I didn't have a conversation with her, but I don't know if it's becoming like myth. People are just spreading information and throwing her name out there as an authority force of, a stamped authority sponsor maybe. But, so you got to go slow, but not too slow. But psychiatrists look at mental illness purely as a biological problem, a chemical imbalance in a neurological faulty workings. So of course the psychiatry community are telling us it's all chemistry, it's chemical, you have a chemical problem, you need a chemical to treat it. However, we also know that, and by we I mean the scientific community, that thoughts and behaviors influence chemistry, as do chemistry influence thoughts and behavior. It's a continuum. If you think sad things long enough and you produce sad feelings, well, what are sad feelings? What neurotransmitter is that connected to? What parts of the brain is that attached to? And what does that prolonged state of thinking sad and not moving and doing, what you would consider depressive behaviors, laying around, dark room, not moving much, just sort of isolating yourself? Of course, that's going to produce worse chemistry. And just as you take someone who's got a bunch of stress in their life, and anxiety or a depression, and you can take them and put them in a beautiful area, you get them moving, you let them, I always use the analogy of the perfect treatment as being on this beautiful tropical beach, of just no worries, carefree, laying in the sun, the water, just nature feeling so damn good and healing and smooth on our skin. Of course, we can't do that. Most of us can't do that. We're not that fortunate. But in a perfect world, if you could do that, it would have a lot of positive effects on your mental health, right? So we know it's a continuum. We know that your thoughts and behavior, it can influence chemistry. This is why meditation, mindfulness works so damn good. I mean, if you can get really deep into like yoga or mindfulness, talk about a life change. Oh my God. Dr. Heather Ashton understood all of these things very, very well. She didn't demonize psychiatry, though she did attack it for its dangerous faults, as should she. She didn't over-romanticize clinical psychology either. She remained a consistent clinical researcher and a positive change advocate for benzodiazepine awareness. She didn't exploit the benzo community, which I, again, admire about her. And she never turned her back on her work in the benzo field, which, let me tell you, is very difficult. It's very, very emotionally taxing. I mean, you really get invested in people's stories and the struggle, and it's heavy on your heart. Their struggles become your struggles. And she didn't, she made some success. She made a name for herself in the world of mental health. And she could have went and wrote books and just disappeared into the sunset, done anything. But she stayed and she kept fighting. She was the real deal. One of the last great mental health experts that could bridge both the medical model and the holistic psychological model, if you could say. Of the thoughts and behaviors influencing chemistry and the way we think and believe, and the way our beliefs shape our world, or the way our perceptions shape our world. She understood all this. I mean, and she was there in the middle, like a true scientist should be. She earned her BA in psychology from Oxford with first class honor. I mean, she was highly educated, well educated, respected. She went on to earn her medical degree and became a very respected doctor. So she was on the medical side of things, yet she wasn't indoctrinated by it. And she was a very prolific researcher, which is the light I tend to most see her under as a research scientist, as a passionate, intellectual researcher. And I believe her research was her weapon of change. I mean, research scientists understand that. She published over 250 research papers in various professional journals and books. 250. Can you believe that? She was a busy bee. But it was her manual, which she called the Ashton Manual, that most helped me when I was going through my own hellish withdrawal. Essentially, her manual was a protocol for taper, which outlined the importance of going slow and steady when tapering off a benzo. It was the first piece of evidence I discovered at the time that confirmed my suspicion regarding benzo withdrawal effects. I had doctors telling me, it was all in my head, that my symptoms couldn't be that bad, and if they were, it must be the pre-existing anxiety condition, reemerging. It was frustrating, to say the least, and I'd say most people going through benzo taper can relate to that problem. I mean, it's a story I've heard I mean, more times than I care to hear, is just it's your pre-existing condition reemerging. It couldn't be the benzo. I mean, how many of us have a show of hands? How many of us have heard that? All of us. Ashton's manual was a game changer for me. It informed me on what was going on because I was at my taper was 5-6 years ago, and YouTube wasn't as developed as it is now with the benzo community. I feel back then even it was this stuff is really starting to gain pace now. Lisa Ling just did a special on it. I mean, uh, so I didn't know where to turn. When I was going to YouTube looking for videos on what the hell I was going through, it was just horror videos. It was just people crying and going through panic attacks on camera. And I was thought, oh my God, it brought up more questions and concerns than it answered. Uh, but when I was fully recovered and, you know, doing much better in my life, I wanted passionately to share my own experiences in a book. And I paid tribute to her manual and named my own book, The Powers Manual. It was a title that appealed to my roots in clinical psychology research, and I just knew it had to be a manual. I didn't want my book to be a book. I understood the importance of a manual, a guide, a protocol. I decided to expand on Ashton's manual by focusing much less on taper protocol because she did such a wonderful job at that. Instead, I just referred to her manual in my book. I drive people toward her manual. She did it right. Follow her manual. But instead, I focus more on psychological aspects of treatment and recovery. Dieting, all these other things. I feel like everything that I felt like she didn't expand on, I said, okay, I'm going to run with that. And although Dr. Ashton has shared her thoughts on the importance of exercise and exposure therapy and avoiding ruminating while tapering, all things I could not agree more with. In fact, I don't think there has ever been anything I have disagreed with Dr. Ashton over outside of her marijuana stance or anti-marijuana stance, which is absolutely bizarre to me. But I hold a great respect for Dr. Ashton, and I always hope to someday to get the pleasure to meet her, and talk about benzo reform and possible treatment options and things. I mean, I was looking forward to trying to find one of her conferences or lectures, and unfortunately, the opportunity never presented itself. So she will be missed, and I wanted to say I appreciate all of her accomplishments and her hard work. She worked very hard to reduce suffering on this planet, like all great healers, That's the key. Reduce suffering. We can't heal everybody. We can't remove all suffering. I mean, wouldn't that be a great world? But, as a healer, you just want to leave it a little bit better, in a little bit better shape than when you found it. And I believe that is the highest order of work that a human being can do. So, rest in peace, Heather Ashton.